Ryan, what you got there?
Judy, you can't look. I'm doing some early Christmas shopping.
I have something you can look at, a new episode of Garden Time.
Welcome to Garden Time. We're out here at Al's in Wilsonville, and we're shopping for ice apples.
And you know, it's not too early to start your Christmas shopping. Next week we'll have lots of ideas for gifts for the gardeners.
But coming up in this week's show, we'll show you how to get your pond ready for winter.
We'll also be giving you some tips on how to prune your bamboo.
But coming up first, digging and dividing dahlias.
Well, I am at Swan Island Dahlias in Canby, and I'm with Heather and with Nick Getz. And so, Heather, you know, my garden dahlias look like this. The frost is hit. So now, what do I do?
So this becomes a little bit of a challenge. You have to make a decision for your area, what you believe is the best choice. So plants need to be hit by frost. We really want to wait till they've turned black like this. If your plants are still at all green, give them a little more time. We say the middle of November or 2 weeks after a killing frost is safe to dig. So these guys got hit about a week and a half to 2 weeks ago, so they're ready to be dug. So he's going to cut them back. We recommend cutting back the day before or the day that you plan to dig. You don't want to cut that stalk off a week or two ahead, because that hollow stalk then fills with water if we get any rain, which we usually do. And so he's cut that stalk down, dug up that little clump. We started with this one single tuber.
Wow.
And now have gotten with 1 year's growth, a complete clump of tubers.
There might be 30 there.
There could be, yes, definitely.
Look at that.
It's got a lot. And if you wash that dirt off, which is really important if you wanted to divide, which you can make some choices about, you need to wash the dirt off completely before you try and start dividing. If you wanted to divide, you could go ahead and do that now, or you could wait till the spring. If you divide now, you'd wash them off completely, and then your eyes would be in on the stalk. So there'll be nothing out on the tuber body themselves. The brain is connected to that last year's stalk.
And it's an eye like an eye in a potato. I mean,
similar. It's just not out on the body of,
right,
of the tuber. It's going to be up close, tucked in. Right. But we tell people, if you're not an expert or aren't sure what to do, best thing to do would be divide that. You could cut this stalk down much lower and divide it like a bird's eye view looking down into 4 sections. And there's a really good chance that you've got an eye somewhere up under there in that section, rather than trying to get down to single pieces.
And then what do we do with it? Do I plant it back in the garden now?
You cannot plant it back.
Okay.
Once you disturb it in the fall or winter, it's up. It's up for the year. So it's up until next spring. We want the ground temperature about 60 degrees when you go to plant next spring. So for now, it needs to be either washed off, most likely, because a lot of people have heavy clay soil, which then turns to practically concrete over the winter. So good to get them washed, air dried overnight, and then put away. And we recommend cardboard boxes lined with a real thickness of paper. We usually say newspaper, but it seems harder to get. So you want some kind of lining. I say a blanket, anything that's going to help keep the moisture. And then you want to put them in peat moss. We like peat moss the best. A lot of people use cedar shavings, pet bedding, but they're kiln dried and they're really dry, which means they're going to suck the moisture from the tubers. So think of these guys kind of like a potato. They've got to have a little bit of moisture content, but we don't want them sopping wet where they're just going to rot and mold all winter. So definitely cover them completely with peat moss. We recommend checking on them about once a month and maybe misting down with a spray bottle the peat moss if you're noticing a little shriveling or just notice that it's really dusty dry. We would like it to be cool to the touch and not be dusty when you're working with it.
Okay.
You also have the decision in the Northwest of leaving them in the ground. If you don't want to divide and dig in the fall, once we get this hard frost, you could cut them back at ground level or right below ground level. And this stalk will no longer be hollow, it'll be solid if you were to cut down a little deeper. And then you could just put plastic down and either layers of straw or hay or soil on top, and those would just act like blankets of warmth. And we hope that we don't have an extreme
Sure.
cold winter. They just cannot be touched by freeze.
Right. Heather, that is all great tips. I know that it's wonderful to see it in the flesh, but if you have any other questions, please go to gardentime.tv and click over to the Swan Island Dahlia website. Lots of information, plus you can order more for delivery next year, next spring, and you can still do that, correct?
Yes, you can order now.
Excellent. So please do all that and enjoy your dahlias and get more for next year. Thanks so much. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Garden Time is brought to you by Portland Nursery, a passion for plants, a nursery for plant people.
The seasons are definitely changing, but at Portland Nursery, the one thing that never changes is our commitment to you, our customer. Whether it's helping you get ready for the holidays or getting your garden ready for the next growing season, Portland Nursery has the experts to help you prepare. Stop by and see what's new for your home or garden, then take home something special for the season. Portland Nursery, a passion for plants, a nursery for plant people, at 50th and Stark or 90th and Division.
You work hard in the garden. Shouldn't your gloves do the same? Garden Like a Girl makes gloves and apparel from natural, recycled, and organic materials. Garden Like a Girl gloves will help you tackle any job. They are designed to fit, protect your hands and nails, and they last. Plus, 10% of our profits go to cancer research. To learn more about Garden Like a Girl products, go to our website, gardenlikeagirl.com. Garden Like a Girl, ruggedly feminine.
Don't let the cold and wet get you this winter. Warm up to a season of heat with Grimm's Fuel. Grimm's has plenty of wood and heating oil ready to deliver to keep you warm all winter long. Stay warm and cozy with Grimm's Fuel.
Well, it's that time to be with Jan McNeilin out in the garden because there's still chores to do.
Sure.
So what you got for us this month?
Well, I have a brugmansia here that one of them I planted and the other one came up from last year. And last year I put some of the smaller ones in the greenhouse, and this year they're too big. So I'm going to cut it back.
Okay.
And then put a big old tomato cage over the top and fill it with leaves. So I'm going to cut it way down.
So do you think that that insulation will just help save the roots?
Yes, because they're going to die off anyway, and then it'll come back from the base. So there's those.
But that's a good idea because it'll be fun to see if it does. Maybe it'll be a mild winter, maybe it won't. So it's kind of a good experiment.
It is, and I'm going to have to get something out of the way here. There we go. All right, so over the top of the root zone, can you see where last year's was?
Yeah.
And then it came up from the base. So I'm going to put a few shovels of mulch around this first, put the tomato cage on, and fill it with leaves.
That's a great idea, and you could do that for other things too in your garden that you want to try to save over and see if they do winter over.
Sure. I have another plant that I looked at the other day to see what the zone was, and it's zone 8 to 10, which is kind of marginal for here. So I'm going to just keep bringing this up here, and then we'll put the cage over the top and fill it with leaves.
Excellent, and that's a good thing to do with your leaves, is to kind of insulate your beds or insulate plants that you want to save over.
Yeah, I blow the leaves clear. I put all the pots on the south side of the house, blow the leaves over, leave them till spring. Same thing in the front yard. I blow them all into the beds and rake them off in the spring.
So really, you don't have to just bring them to the compost people or put them in your compost in a certain area. You can put them in your beds, and that leaf mold is amazing.
Yes, it is.
Amazing mulch.
Well, in the process, you can look online for USDA plant zones, which will give you information on where you live, what zone you're in.
Right.
We're in 8 here. But last winter, I bet you we were almost 9 because we didn't really get that cold a temperature. And so the zones are here, and what the USDA plant zones are is that it's the temperature, the lowest temperature that plant can take and survive.
Right.
Doesn't mean that it's gonna do great, but the root zone likely is going to still live.
Right, and it's an average temperature.
Right. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing plants. Look for the USDA zone and know where you are.
Right. And the plant you were talking about is the Tupistra, correct?
Yes.
And that you
it's
have
a Chinese
gorgeous
ruffle plant.
Yeah, and there's a beautiful one at Lansu, and you have a beautiful specimen here.
I guess I do. I didn't really know what it was in the beginning, so I figured it out and figured out the zone.
Right.
The next thing I want to remind folks of, I've planted a lot of bulbs already, but here are some more, and I had them ready to plant and in the greenhouse. But there wasn't enough air circulation in there, and they started to mold.
Oh.
So before I got them in the ground. So I brought them in the house, let them dry out, and now I'm going to plant them.
And Jan, to kind of prevent this mold, people are bringing in houseplants in their small greenhouses and other plants. And so what do you recommend that can cut down on this mold?
Well, the thing that will is, because it's like in my greenhouse, and that's what happened to these bulbs, I have a little fan in there that I hadn't turned on yet. So if you got a good air circulation, same thing in the house, you're not going to turn a fan on in the house, but it's going to be drier in the house than it would be in a greenhouse as far as air circulation.
And what about like slugs? We have to talk about slugs this time of year. We should be baiting, and then you had noticed something.
Well, I've had questions in the extension office years ago that are these slug eggs, and it's osmocote. It's a coated fertilizer that are put in the pots. In many nurseries, you'll come home with it there.
Right.
So just know the difference between a nice milky white slug egg versus osmocote. If you're using osmocote, scratch it into the soil and keep it damp so it continues to work for you.
Well, you know, Jan, we've had a great year. It's been a crazy year, but thank you so much for all the tips. We so appreciate it.
No problem. We'll see you next year.
Yep, definitely.
So our tip of the week is how to use our leaves that are falling in your yard as a flower bed mulch. So it's pretty simple. As we're going through and raking up our leaves, we can just rake those into our flower beds. And what that'll do is act as a natural mulch as it breaks down. It'll help protect our plants. It also protects the soil. So when those rains and compacting the soil, it'll prevent that a little bit and also helps with some erosion control. So come springtime, it'll be easy. We can either rake whatever's left out, or we can just add a fresh load of mulch over the top and it'll protect our flower beds. So that's our tip of the week, is how to protect our flower beds whether using our garden leaves.
At Blooming Junction, fall isn't about winding down, it's about getting ready. In the garden, start the next season off right now. Fall plantings produce healthier, more robust, and drought-tolerant plants than those planted in spring or summer. In the kitchen, get ready for the holidays with fresh, organically grown produce from our fields. So, whether it's for the garden or for the kitchen this season, Blooming Junction is your place for quality, uncommon plants and produce for your home and garden.
Ryan, you need to brush up your look. Ryan, that is better.
It's always better when you show off your Garden Time pride.
Check out the Garden Time store on our webpage for a great selection of Garden Time gifts and apparel. Choose a hoodie, shirt, hat, bag, or mask for yourself or as a gift for the Garden Time fan in your life. See the complete selection on the Garden Time website.
Pick up some Garden Time gear and show your Garden Time pride.
Find everything you need for this holiday season at Owls.
Well, we've gotten a taste of cold, and it's time to start thinking about our ponds. So I'm out here with Eamon. We're out at Hughes Water Gardens. And Eamon, what do we need to be doing in our ponds this time of year?
Well, one of the first things is to get rid of any of the dying foliage and stuff in your pond, because you don't want that to rot into the water. That'll create a big algae problem for you next year.
Okay.
So I'll show a few things quickly. If you have a water lily, there might still be some green leaves on it. You could leave those on. But anything that's yellowing, you can take off. And just a scissors will work. You don't need a pruning shears for lilies.
Okay.
So you basically just trim it back. I'm going to trim this totally back so you can see where you're to be. So if you imagine all of that rotting back into your pond again, will cause a mighty mess for you next year.
And that's probably going to clog filters and things like that too, if
Yeah.
it just sits there and starts clogging.
So all I'm leaving on this, there's one tiny leaf here, and then there's some growing tips coming up here.
Okay.
And they will just come up again next spring for you.
And so you'll just leave that in the water like that?
Just leave it in the water. People often worry, are these hardy enough with the ice? As long as this crown doesn't freeze, you're fine.
Okay.
So in our area here, 6 inches underneath, but if you can drop it down a foot, 18 inches, it'll be fine.
Okay.
And then bring it back up again for the spring.
Okay. And then some of the other ones that have some
of the
foliage down there,
marginals, again, this got hit by frost just the last couple of nights. And again, you can just trim off all of that easily.
And so it
Just
looks
leave
like
a
you don't
couple
have
of
to
the
be
small.
too delicate with them.
You don't.
It's
You
just
just give
getting
it a
that
chance.
foliage
There's your growing tip coming for next year, and that will be fine. Plants like irises can get quite a bit messy. I'm just
Right.
trying to show you one part of this. It would take us all day. See that growing center there?
Yep.
These often pull off, but if they don't, you can trim them. So what we're trying to do is just leave that nice fresh centerpiece for next year,
Okay.
just there.
So then once we have, our plants all kind of taken care of, what else do we need to be looking for as far as, like the water or the rest of the pond?
Well, if you have fish in the pond, something you've got to be really careful of is the feeding at this time of year. If you give koi or regular goldfish high protein food, summer food, too late in the year when the temperature is cold, it rots their belly out and it actually drops the belly out of them. So you have to transition to a spring and fall diet, which is more a wheat germ diet.
Okay.
So you do that until the temperature drops to around 50 degrees, and then let them go into dormancy for the winter.
Right, you don't want to beef them up and have them active since they're going to
And there are many little thermometers, very reasonable, that'll show you what your water temperature is. It's really important to keep track of your water temperature for the feeding. And then one other little thing here I want to show you is this is a little net. It's a strawberry netting. And if you're in a high leaf area under trees and stuff, just if the pond is small enough, put this over the pond, and then you just peel it back. And
that makes for a lot easier cleanup than trying to scoop all that stuff out all the time. Then you just pull that off and get them in.
So that's your fish and plants taken care of.
And then for the water itself, if it's worry about freezing and ice. If it gets that cold, do we need to worry about that, or is it going to depend on the pond?
In our area, we don't have to worry too much about it. We do occasionally get a deep freeze for a week or 10 days.
Okay.
And in that case, you've got to make sure there's enough oxygen transfer happening at the water surface. And there are some pond heaters that you can just float in there if you're going to get into that. This just floats there, and it keeps an area of the ice open for the oxygen to get down in there. And if you have a waterfall in one of those deep freezes, you do have to be careful. Let it run, and you'll get these wonderful ice sculptures on it all winter. It's great. But in order to form those, you're dropping water under the ice in the pond, and you can actually run your pump dry. So be aware of that if you're creating your ice sculptures,
Right, make sure your water levels
for the
are
winter, so
staying
the
up.
water level is good. And then one final thing on the water. If you're doing bacteria, we love, in most of our systems, we use a bacteria. And what this particular one now they developed is for autumn and winter. So the beneficial bacteria in this will break down any sort of sludge or that's on the bottom of the pond, fish poop, dead leaves, all of that. So it's good to put some of this in for the winter. And then in spring, you put in a more activated one that really acts for the summer.
Cleans it up more.
For the bacteria, really. And if you take those simple, items there and do that for your pond, everything will be ready for you next spring, just to go on and enjoy it for next year.
Well, Eamon, we always appreciate the tips, these things that we can take home and do ourselves as more people are putting in ponds. So it's been a pleasure to be out here. For more information, you can go to your website or you can go to gardentime.tv and we'll click you open. So, Eamon, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Garden Time is brought to you by Capital Subaru. Your way on the Parkway.
Great. And how much cargo room does it have?
Tons. Basically, all of that stuff will fit right here.
Even this guy?
Definitely.
I love it. What's next?
Well, financing can be done online, and if you're ready to test drive, we can bring it to you.
Wow, no wonder everyone told me to go to Capital Subaru. Thanks, Shelby. You ready to get back on the road again?
Definitely.
2020 isn't canceled. It just looks different. Shop online, by phone, or in person. Your way at Capital Subaru.
Find everything you need for this holiday season at Owls.
For 4 generations, Sealy Mint has grown and harvested the highest quality mint and mint oil. The commitment to quality is found in all of their signature handmade Sealy Mint products. Their mint patties, mint melts, and peppermint bark all use pure mint oils and not synthetic flavorings. Now for the holidays, you can also enjoy their handmade peppermint and spearmint candy canes and ribbon candy. You can find Sealy Mint products at your favorite Market and selected gift stores, or you can order them online. Sealy Mint. Real farmers, real mint.
Don't let the cold and wet get you this winter. Warm up to a season of heat with Grimm's Fuel. Grimm's has plenty of wood and heating oil ready to deliver to keep you warm all winter long. Stay warm and cozy with Grimm's Fuel.
Well, I'm up here at Hoyt Arboretum. I'm with Martin. Martin, we're out in your bamboo grove, and there's some maintenance we need to do on bamboo.
Yeah.
And now's kind of the time of year to be doing that?
It is. There's certain things right now we really want to be doing. So our bamboo grove has been here for about 6 years now, but every year we do some maintenance, and one of the big ones right now is maintaining the root pruning trench.
Okay.
And this year we did re-sanded the trench, so we have a trench that's about 12 inches wide and about 12 to 18 inches deep, and it's full of sand. But the sand doesn't actually stop the bamboo from growing, but it gives you a place to dig and prune to, so basically a marker point.
Right, because some people are using, the big bamboo liners or the big heavy plastics, but you don't necessarily need to do that, and you're not doing that up here by having that trench.
Yeah, the trench really does that, and so we can take the shovel and we basically, every inch of this trench we want to slide the shovel into, and then what we'll find is we'll hit a stem. So there's one right here. We can feel that stem, and then what we'll do is go down to the root rhizome, and we'll pull that out of the ground and cut it off on the inside of the trench, and making sure that basically removes all the nodes that are beyond that point, and then the root will turn and grow new nodes out sideways that are in the area we want the bamboo to stay.
Gotcha. So that's going to prevent it from spreading. And by having that sand, it just makes it super easy to dig in.
Yeah, it makes it easy to dig in. And then we still have to do that at least twice a year. And on a vigorous bamboo, ideally, maybe even 3 or 4 times a year, just checking. And that just makes sure that you don't have any major rhizomes that leave the space you want to keep.
And you said those rhizomes are typically pretty shallow, so they're not real deep in the ground.
No, almost everything's in the top 12 inches, and we actually find, you can see here there's some that are right at the surface, because where you get a change in grade, they tend to stay right at the surface even.
So you'll go through a couple times a year, you said, prune out all those rhizomes that are coming off, but then there's also pruning you want to do on the existing canes themselves.
Yeah, and we want to maintain the sort of density of our stand, because if they get too tied together, that'll mean we're going to get a lot smaller canes in the next year. And then we also will prune out damaged. Sometimes we'll get some snow damage or wind damage, and so we're going to prune those canes out.
And when's a good time of year? Is there certain times of year that are better for pruning those older canes?
Well, I think everyone gets really excited in the spring, and they want to get out there and kind of clean up the winter damage that they have. And that's actually a really tough time for taking out canes on bamboo, because there's always a point where we've got these new stems that are growing super fast. They're pulling all their energy from the old canes. And so what we'll see in the spring is the old canes will get really yellow and look a little sickly. And then people think, oh, I should take that cane out. Well, if you take it out then, you're going to deplete the energy reserves of the plant. So we actually want to wait until these new canes are fully elongated and fully branched out and fully leafed out before we take any of those old canes out. And then we can start to go through and select some of those older canes to thin. So a lot of times that means late summer, and we're doing ours at the moment.
And so then when you're looking at canes like this, if you're doing some thinning, which ones would you be picking out to?
Yeah, so we're gonna, this is Moso bamboo, so Phyllosteches edulis, and on the new stems with this variety, they're very pubescent, so they're downy. So this is a brand new stem. And then what we'll see is some of the older stems will only have a little bit of that downiness around the node, and as the stems age, they become more yellow. So this is a much older stem here. So we're going to take out the older stems, anything with damage, and then anything that's really closer than about 12 inches together. Our goal for this particular variety is to have a cane about every 1 to 2 feet.
Okay.
That's a good density for this really vigorous bamboo.
And then are you trying to, when you're removing that cane, you just cut it off at the ground? Or
yeah, just take it down at ground level, and just so it's not visible. You don't kind of want to leave these stubs that are above the ground. We usually take them right at the ground.
Okay.
And then it's not going to grow back once you cut that cane.
Gotcha.
It's done at that point.
And then there's also different types of bamboo, like some of the ground cover types and the clumping types that you were saying. There's some different pruning techniques for those.
So this is Sasa veitchii, and with the Sasas, you can actually go through every couple of years and just take them completely to the ground. And it can be helpful too for controlling, we have some bamboo mite issues. By taking out everything all the way to the ground and cleaning some of that leaf litter out, we can minimize some of the mite issues with the canes, and we find that new growth tends to look really nice and clean and really glossy. So this was just done a year ago for this particular stand. And then we'll still do a little bit of runner. So Sasa is still a fairly vigorous runner, but those runners are really small, so pruning them out is not actually that big a job. Yeah. And then with the clumpers, we're just going to thin the overall cane density, and so try to just maintain health of the plant. Again, maybe take about 1/3 of the stems out. And of course we call them clumpers, but they still get bigger, and depending on how big you want that clump to be, you may want to do some root pruning around that as well, but it just happens in inches versus feet.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Martin, it's always a wealth of information when we're up here, up at the gardens, up at the Arboretum. So we appreciate you being out here today with us. Some more information on the bamboo and bamboo pruning. You can go to gardentime.tv and find all sorts of information. So Martin, we appreciate being out here, and come on out to Hoyt Arboretum.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for watching Garden Time today. And it's not too early to start your Christmas shopping. Check with your local independent garden centers for their hours and if they're having any special events.
And for more information on today's show or any of our other episodes, go to gardentime.tv. Judy and I thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week on Garden Time. Ice apple?
Thanks. Ryan, you need to brush up your look. Ryan, that is better.
It's always better when you show off your Garden Time pride.
Check out the Garden Time store on our webpage for a great selection of Garden Time gifts and apparel. Choose a hoodie, shirt, hat, bag, or mask for yourself or as a gift for the Garden Time fan in your life. See the complete selection on the Garden Time website.
Pick up some Garden Time gear and show your Garden Time pride.
The preceding was a paid program of the Guston Creative Group and its sponsors.